I said no to being the family's go-to babysitter after they planned a vacation for Mom's 60th without even including me. I'm 27, and over the past 5 years, I've focused intensely on climbing the ladder at one of Austin's fastest-growing tech companies, Valence Dynamics, where I now work as a manager. While my younger sisters were starting families, I poured my energy into my career. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy with the path I chose, but every now and then I wonder if I missed something important along the way. No partner, no children, just me in my office with its downtown view. It was a typical Tuesday morning, and I was knee-deep in quarterly reports when my phone buzzed. My sister Morgan, 25, was calling. I answered, still flipping through performance evaluations. "Hey Ava, do you have a second?" she asked, her voice bright as always. Morgan's the youngest of us three, and has always been the most upbeat. "Sure, what's going on?" I said, nudging aside some papers and trying to focus. "You know Mom's turning 60 in 2 months, right?" she asked, clearly building to something. "Yeah? Well, we're planning a big surprise for her, a getaway, and we're hoping everyone will chip in." That got my attention. "Okay, how much are we talking about?" When she told me the amount, I nearly spilled my coffee. It was more than I'd spent on my last vacation, which, come to think of it, had been 3 years ago. "I know it's a lot," Morgan said quickly, "but it's for Mom, you know." "No, it's fine," I replied, already opening my banking app. "I'll send it over now." "Great. Oh, and one more thing. Make sure to take that week off from work. Don't schedule anything else, all right?" The next few weeks blurred together, filled with meetings and looming deadlines. I occasionally wondered what kind of plans Morgan and our middle sister Ivy were putting together, but whenever I asked, they gave vague answers and changed the subject. Eventually, work consumed me, and I forgot about the whole thing. Mom's birthday slipped further into the background, until a Saturday dinner brought everything back. We were all gathered at our parents' house. Mom and Dad, Ivy and Morgan, Aunt Linda, and her 2 sons, Chris and Jeremy. The usual chaos of a family dinner filled the house. Dad cracking the same old jokes about Texas football. Mom fluttering around the table worried someone didn't have enough food. It was familiar and loud and comforting, until Morgan casually dropped the bomb while poking at her grilled asparagus. "So, everything's set for Mom's birthday," she said nonchalantly. "We booked a week at Timber Ridge Lodge in Colorado." The room lit up with excitement. Mom looked thrilled. Dad was already making plans to hit the slopes, and my sisters chattered about which ski trails they wanted to tackle. "Wait," I said, confused. "No one told me anything. I don't even own a ski jacket. How am I supposed to get ready in time?" The table fell awkwardly silent. I felt a pit forming in my stomach as Mom cleared her throat. "Sweetheart," she said gently, slipping into the tone she always used when asking a favor she knew I wouldn't like. "We were actually hoping you could do something big for all of us. We want you to stay back and watch the kids." I stared around the table waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was a joke. But the silence held firm. Only the clink of cutlery against plates broke it. "You want me to stay and babysit?" I asked, stunned. All 5 of them, I began mentally listing them. Morgan's toddler, Miles, Ivy's baby girl, Clara, Chris's twins, Max and Ellie, and Jeremy's son, Levi, all under the age of 7. "You're so great with them," Mom said cheerfully. "They absolutely love their Aunt Ava." I scanned the faces around the table again, still hoping to find some sign. This wasn't serious. There was nothing but hopeful anticipation. They were waiting for me to say yes, just like always. That's not fair," I said, surprised by how shaky my voice sounded. "Well, what's done this? Well, wonder Bajan, I want to be part of the trip too. It's Mom's birthday." Ivy sighed and set down her fork. "Come on, Ava. You'd just be bored up there anyway. You hate crowded, noisy places." "Bored," I repeated. "Well," she said, glancing at Morgan, "you're amazing with the kids. They love you. And honestly, you don't really need a break like we do." A sharp, tight feeling took hold in my chest. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. Morgan jumped in. "It just means we've got husbands and kids and everything. We need a break. You get that, right?" The words blurred in my mind. I blinked back tears, refusing to let them see me cry. Without another word, I stood up, grabbed my purse, and headed for the door. "Ava," Mom called out, her voice laced with concern, but not enough to get up, not enough to follow me. As I stepped out into the night, I heard her say behind me, "She'll be a little upset now, but she'll come around. She always does." I kept walking. The night air was cold, but it helped clear my head. 10 years. 10 years of being the one they could rely on, of being the dependable one. And this is what it got me. Not the request. That wasn't even the worst part. It was the assumption that I'd say yes, that they didn't even feel the need to ask. They used my money, took my vacation time, set my schedule, all without giving me a choice. And now they expected me to sit at home with 5 kids while they played in the snow. I spent that night pacing around my apartment, revisiting every holiday, every dinner, every event where I put my needs aside for theirs. At 16, I was cooking dinner while Mom helped Ivy with her school project. At 18, I skipped a spring break trip to stay home with Morgan while our parents went away. At 21, I was working a full-time job while helping Ivy afford her prom dress. It never stopped. "Can you watch Miles for a couple hours, Ava? The twins are too much this weekend. Would you mind? Levi loves spending time with you. It'll be easy." And every single time, I had said yes. Even with deadlines looming, even when I was already exhausted, I was the reliable one, the helpful sister, the perfect daughter. I looked around my apartment and saw the family photo albums on the coffee table. In every photo, I was the one behind the camera. During every holiday, I was the one in the kitchen while everyone else relaxed. When was the last time someone asked what I wanted? Morgan's words echoed in my mind. "It's not like you need a break from family life." As if my life, my job, my achievements weren't valid because I didn't have a husband and children. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay awake thinking of how I'd worked full-time through college on scholarship, refusing to let my parents worry about expenses, how I'd gotten a job right after graduating, how I helped both my sisters through school, how many times I had sent part of my paycheck home when things were tight. By morning, my mind was made up. I wasn't confrontational by nature, but I needed to be heard, and I had a plan. That Sunday morning, after a restless night, I waited until a reasonable hour before picking up my phone. I dialed Mom's number. She answered on the third ring. "Hi, Mom," I said, my tone steady. "I've been thinking about the trip to the lodge, and I've come up with a solution." "Oh?" she said cautiously. "I'll pay for a professional nanny to watch all 5 kids while we're away," I explained. "That way everyone can relax and enjoy the trip together, including me." There was a long pause, a bit too long. "That won't work, Ava," Mom said at last, her voice tightening. "We can't leave the kids with a stranger. They're used to you." "I understand," I said patiently, "but I want to celebrate with the family too. I can find someone with excellent references, someone qualified. We'd all get to be together for your birthday." Her tone shifted. "You're not exactly a people person, Ava. All that noise and activity, you'd feel out of place anyway. The kids would keep you busy, and you'd have a good time with them. It's perfect." Before I could say another word, the call ended. She hung up on me. I stood there with the phone still against my ear, stunned. Her words rang louder than any voicemail ever could. It wasn't just about this one trip. It was about years of expectations, years of assuming I'd always be available, always willing, always ready to step in without complaint. It was about being the fallback, the one they didn't even think they had to ask. That was the moment I knew things had to change. The phone buzzed again before I could even put it down. "Morgan, how dare you?" she snapped before I could even say hello. "Mom told me about your little idea, hiring a babysitter. Are you trying to destroy everything?" "Destroy what?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "I'm offering a solution that includes everyone." "We already have a solution," Morgan said, her voice rising. "Everything is booked. Everything is planned, and now you're being completely selfish and trying to mess it up, because you can't just do this one thing for your family." The words hit me like a slap. "Selfish? After everything? Are you really saying I'm being selfish?" I asked. "Yes," she hissed. "Everyone's excited. The lodge is paid for. Activities are scheduled, and now you want to ruin Mom's birthday because you suddenly decided to put yourself first. I'm not trying to ruin anything. If you go through with this, if you screw this up for Mom and everyone else." She cut in. Don't ever talk to me again. Click. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Before I could even process the call, it buzzed again. Texts from Ivy started pouring in. Family is supposed to be there for each other. Remember when I covered that work event for you last year, when you were sick? The kids love you. Why are you being so bitter? My fingers flew across the screen in response. A real family doesn't manipulate each other. A real family respects each other's time and includes them in plans. A real family doesn't assume someone else will just give up everything to make their lives easier. I saw the typing dots pop up, then vanish, again and again, but no reply came. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Something clicked. They'd taken my money without explaining what it was for. Told me to take time off without saying why. Carefully kept me out of the loop. Planned everything behind my back, and just assumed I'd fall into line. They used me, and now because I refused to be the doormat this time, they turned to guilt, threats, emotional blackmail, anything to push me back into place. But the fog had cleared, and I saw everything for what it really was. I felt lighter. I opened my laptop and started searching. Within an hour, I had a reservation at a cozy beachfront hotel in Florida. Nothing extravagant, but it had a balcony overlooking the water and was close to everything I'd need. I even bought a first-class ticket for the flight. After all, I had plenty of money left over since I wouldn't be buying ski gear or planning kid-friendly activities for the week. The following days at work were unusually quiet. The texts stopped. The calls stopped. My family likely thought I was home prepping snack bags, organizing crafts, and arranging nap schedules. That thought made me smile. I packed light, beachwear, sandals, a new swimsuit, nothing but essentials for me and me alone. One of my coworkers, Jenna, noticed me checking the weather in Florida and asked, "Going somewhere sunny in the middle of winter? Sometimes you just have to do something unexpected," I replied. It felt so good to say that out loud. The morning of my flight, I looked around my apartment one last time. Everything was in order. The fridge was empty, windows locked, trash taken out, just like always. Except this time I wouldn't be answering any panicked calls for emergency babysitting. As I headed to the airport, my phone lit up with a text from Aunt Linda. "The kids are really excited to spend time with their favorite aunt. Don't let them down." A flicker of guilt passed through me, but then I remembered that dinner. The way they'd smiled and nodded while excluding me from everything. The guilt faded. Chris sent a full calendar with the twins' allergy and medication schedules. Jeremy followed up with Levi's nap routine. Ivy reminded me that Clara needed her favorite bunny for sleep. Morgan insisted Miles would only eat certain snacks. They all assumed I'd agreed, despite everything I'd said. As I sat at the gate, the messages kept rolling in. "We're counting on you, Ava. Don't forget Miles' dinosaur. Clara needs her bottle every 4 hours." I turned off my phone and tucked it into my bag. No texts, no calls, no chaos. Just me, the ocean, and a whole week of freedom. As the plane ascended and the Austin skyline disappeared beneath the clouds, I felt something lift from my shoulders, the weight of everyone else's expectations. I was finally free. When I stepped off the plane, Florida greeted me with warm air and the soothing scent of the ocean. The breeze rustled the palm trees, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without tension clawing at my chest. The hotel was even better than it looked online. Bright, clean, and quiet. From the balcony, I could see the waves stretching endlessly into the horizon. The sound of them crashing against the shore felt like therapy. That first afternoon, I wandered barefoot down the beach. The sand was soft beneath my feet, the sun warming my skin. I couldn't remember the last time I did something purely for myself, without checking in, without worrying about someone else's needs. I swam in the pool, uninterrupted, read a novel by the water, ate dinner at a cozy seafood place overlooking the coast, where no one needed me to cut up food or wipe spills or chase toddlers around. I watched the sunset from my balcony, a glass of wine in hand, and realized I had absolutely nowhere to be, no one to answer to. It was peace. The final morning of my trip, I soaked up every moment. I sipped my coffee slowly, stared out at the ocean, and braced myself to turn my phone back on. I knew what was waiting for me, but I wasn't prepared for the sheer volume. The screen lit up the second it powered on. Dozens of messages, missed calls, voicemails, hundreds, actually. The timestamp started exactly 1 week ago, the day they'd shown up at my place. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through the messages. Morgan, Ava, where are you? We're outside your apartment. Open the door. The kids are getting antsy. Ivy, you home. We brought Clara and Miles like we planned. Chris, just dropping off Max and Ellie. Jeremy, Levi's asking for you. What's going on? As I read, I could practically see the scene. My sisters and cousins standing outside my quiet apartment, 5 kids in tow, expecting me to open the door with a smile and welcome the chaos. Then came the confusion. This isn't funny, Ava. Seriously, where are you? What are we supposed to do now? That quickly turned into fury. Morgan, you selfish jerk. How could you do this to us? Ivy, you completely ruined Mom's birthday. Then there was Aunt Linda. Her messages shocked me. I'd never seen her use that kind of language before. Her texts were filled with guilt-tripping, accusations, and outright nastiness. Then came Mom's messages, slower and later in the day. I'm deeply disappointed in you, Ava. I never thought you could be so self-centered. And finally, one message from Dad, who rarely texted at all. Your mother's crying. I hope you're proud. The voicemails were even worse. Voice after voice, angry, bitter, accusatory. Some were shouting, others crying. Even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in months were messaging me, piling on the same message. You've always been dependable. How could you let us down like this? The poor kids, what kind of person abandons their family like that? I sat there on the hotel bed, phone in hand, soaking it all in. These were the same people I'd bent over backward for, who I'd cooked for, cleaned for, babysat for. Every one of them had taken and taken, and now that I'd finally drawn a line, they turned on me. And not just turned, they showed their true colors. The names they called me, the assumptions they made, the way they reduced me to nothing more than the family help. Someone who should feel guilty for wanting a life of her own. It was like seeing them clearly for the first time. I packed my bag and left the hotel, headed for the airport. But I wasn't the same person who had arrived a week ago. That Ava, the one who would have felt bad, who might have apologized, who would have tried to fix it, she didn't exist anymore. I had just finished unpacking my beach clothes when there was a loud, frantic knock at my front door. Before I could reach it, I heard the familiar sound of a key turning in the lock. Mom, I had given her a spare key years ago, for emergencies. She stormed in, followed by Morgan and Ivy, their faces flushed, eyes blazing. The calm I'd cultivated in Florida disappeared in seconds. Morgan was the first to speak. Do you even understand what you've done? She shouted, stepping forward. You destroyed everything. Ivy added. Everything was planned, and you ruined it. I stayed planted, arms crossed, watching them throw their rage around my living room. The same living room where I'd entertained their children countless times, where I'd canceled plans to help them out, where I'd played the reliable sister over and over again. Chris and Jeremy refused to stay with the kids. Ivy snapped. Their wives suddenly had things to do. So guess who had to stay behind? I did, while the rest of them went to the lodge. I missed Mom's birthday because of you, she yelled. No one had a good time, Mom added. All we talked about was how you betrayed the family. Your father couldn't even enjoy the slopes. That's how upset he was. They were yelling over each other, competing to see who could sound more outraged. And then something inside me broke, but not how they expected. I laughed. Right there in the middle of their accusations, I started laughing. They froze. 3 stunned faces stared back at me. What's so funny? Mom demanded, cheeks turning red. What could possibly be funny about this? I wiped the corners of my eyes, trying to contain it. Don't you realize how ridiculous this all sounds? Morgan's jaw tightened. Excuse me? You all planned this trip behind my back, took my money, blocked out my time, and decided without even asking me that I'd babysit 5 kids for a week while the rest of you had fun. And now, because I didn't follow your script, "You're calling me selfish. You've always helped before," Mom said, her voice suddenly softer, like she was the one who had been hurt. "You've never said no. And that's the problem," I shot back, "because I always said yes. You stopped seeing me as part of the family. I was just free labor, the built-in babysitter, the person who didn't matter unless she was helping you." "That's not true," Morgan protested, but she didn't sound convinced. "Really?" I asked. "Then why wasn't I included in the planning? Why didn't anyone ask me if I wanted to go? Why was I the only one expected to miss the trip, to miss Mom's birthday, and take care of your kids like a nanny?" They didn't have an answer. Their faces were blank, then defensive. "You're being dramatic," Mom finally said. "You embarrass the family. You hurt the children. This isn't the daughter I raised." "No, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You're the ones who've been selfish. You pushed and pushed, and now that I finally pushed back, you don't know what to do with yourselves." She straightened, shoulders rigid. "If that's how you feel, maybe I don't have a daughter named Ava anymore." I nodded, not flinching. "If that's what you want, then so be it." 6 weeks passed after that final confrontation in my living room. 6 full weeks of silence, no texts, no calls, no unannounced drop-ins. The only sounds from my family came indirectly, through passive-aggressive posts on social media. I saw one from Mom just last week. "Some people only think of themselves." It was followed by the usual stream of sympathy from relatives who had no idea what had really happened. A few days later, Morgan posted a picture of Miles, smiling wide with his messy hair and snack-covered hands. "So grateful for the people in my life who understand what family really means." And Ivy? She went all out with a long paragraph about cutting ties with toxic individuals who destroy family bonds with their selfishness. She didn't mention me by name, of course, but anyone who knew the story didn't need the tag. There was a time when those kinds of messages would have wrecked me. I'd have spent nights overthinking, rewriting responses in my head, wondering if maybe they were right, if maybe I was the one in the wrong, but not anymore. Now I scrolled past them with a quiet, almost amused smile. It was predictable, so very predictable. Guilt, shame, then public martyrdom. It was their cycle. I had changed mine. Instead of waiting around on weekends, anticipating the next frantic phone call asking if I could watch the kids just for a few hours, I joined a local book club. It was a small group, just a few women who met every other Saturday at a cafe downtown. The first time I went, I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, for someone to need something, but it never did. Last week I booked another trip, this time to Europe. Springtime. I found a great deal and didn't bother to ask anyone if the dates worked for them. I just clicked purchase. No negotiations, no sacrifices, just a decision made entirely for me. Sometimes in quiet moments I still think about my nieces and nephews. I miss their little laughs, the sticky hugs, the drawings they'd hand me like prized gifts. But I don't miss the way they were used like bargaining chips, tools to manipulate me into compliance. I hope when they're older, they'll understand. Maybe they'll see the patterns too. Maybe they'll choose something different for themselves. I still have the emergency key Mom used to barge into my home that day. I've thought about mailing it back to her, wrapping it in a simple envelope with no note, just the key. Returned. A silent statement, but I haven't. Something stops me every time. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe I'm still holding on to some thread of hope that they'll one day realize how wrong they were, that they'll reflect and truly see how they treated me, not as a sister or daughter, but as a convenience. More than anything, I hope their kids grow up learning a different kind of love, one that doesn't come with strings attached, one that doesn't demand silence or sacrifice in exchange for belonging. But I'm not waiting for that day. Not anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm not placing my future on pause in the hope of being accepted or understood. Yesterday, I finally removed myself from the family group chat. I didn't announce it. No dramatic goodbye, no explanation. I just left, quietly, without fanfare. One more thread severed, one more source of stress, gone. Some would call it selfish. My family certainly would. But I've come to understand the difference between selfishness and self-respect. There's a line, and they crossed it too many times. Sometimes, the healthiest, bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who refuse to see your worth beyond what you can give them. Now, as I sit in my sunlit apartment, flipping through travel guides for my upcoming trip to Europe, I feel something I haven't felt in years: freedom. The silence that once felt so suffocating is now a space filled with possibilities. The blank spots on my calendar don't scare me anymore. They feel like windows, open and waiting. I'm no longer the go-to aunt, the backup plan, the invisible helper behind every holiday, birthday, or emergency. I'm just Ava. And for the first time, that's not only enough. It feels like everything